Well, first, Gauteng Premier David Makhura is expected to visit the Charlotte Maxeke hospital in Johannesburg this morning. Firefighters have been battling overnight to contain a blaze that started yesterday. It died out and then flared up again last night. Scores of patients are being moved to other facilities, we understand. Let's get the latest from our reporter, my colleague Manqoba Mchunu, there from the early hours of this morning. Manqoba, when you first got there this morning, all we could see was the burning embers and the orange flames in the darkness of night. Now, however, behind you, we're starting to see the extent of the damage at the hospital.
Well, certainly, Gareth, but the fire emergency personnel at this particular point telling us that they're still not able to assess the extent of the damage. And this is because we do understand, Gareth, that the blaze has still not been contained at this particular moment. But what they have been telling us is that what they've been able to do, because you'll recall, Gareth, that they have been working from outside. They haven't been able to access the building where the fire itself is alight at this particular stage due to the fact that one of the floors of this particular facility has collapsed, and therefore there are fears that the structural integrity has been compromised. So it is quite dangerous for them to go inside this parking bay. But what they are saying at this point is that they have been trying to contain at least the fire from reaching out to other floors of the hospital. You would know that there are quite a number of wards that are just behind this parking bay where this fire is. We understand that there are 48 wards as well as ICU wards which have now been evacuated, and that most of those patients, we've been told, is that they have been evacuated to other wards as well as other hospitals, including Steve Biko Hospital in Pretoria. So at this particular moment, Gareth, what we're being told by the fire personnel is that at this particular point they have still not been able to contain that blaze, and they're still, as you can see just here behind me, they're still busy, Gareth, working to try and extinguish the fire. We have seen quite a number of trucks coming into this particular area. We do understand that the issue of water supply is also one of the issues that these firefighters are battling with, given the fact that some of the water pumps that are here in this particular hospital have not been functioning. And this is due to the fact that there was looting of some of the equipment from these water pumps. So they've had to literally bring water into this particular site in order to try and extinguish the blaze. And earlier on, I did speak to the Johannesburg emergency spokesperson, Sinok Matabuha, and this is what he had to say about this particular issue.
All right, so Manqoba, I think we're going to bring that particular soundbite to our viewers a little bit later. In the absence of that soundbite, just surmise for me, if you can, what the EMS said to you when you spoke to them earlier. We don't have that soundbite. Just remind us what they said to you.
Well, basically, Gareth, what they say is that the couplings of these water pumps that are here at the hospital had been stolen. So this has made it quite difficult for them to be able to put their pipes and to access the water from these pumps. So as a result of that, they've had to now bring in water tankers into the hospital to try and have some water supply in order to deal with the flames. And this has made it quite difficult for them to be able to deal with this fire. But as things stand, we do know that there have been several of those water tanks that have been brought here to try and deal with the fire.
And just let's just remind viewers who perhaps weren't watching your earlier crossing, any idea as to where and why this fire started? My understanding is that it did begin in an area where they were storing medication of some kind.
I couldn't quite...
Well, let me try.
Gareth, what we do understand in this particular...
Go ahead, Manqoba.
What we do understand, Gareth, at this particular point, Gareth, is that this was a storage facility where most of the hospital supplies, that is your surgical supplies as well as medical supplies, were being kept. And what we're hearing is that some of the equipment that have been destroyed in this particular blaze includes your personal protective equipment that the hospital had purchased, as well as some of the medical staff that is being used by doctors when they're treating patients. We've been told that there were masks inside, there were also syringes inside that particular facility, and also gloves. So these are normal medical supplies that the hospital would use on a daily basis to treat patients, but the extent of how much of it has been destroyed and just at what cost this fire has come, of course, that has not been determined at this point. We do understand that there is a meeting that is currently going on where they'll then be able to assess the extent of the damage that has been caused here. But the Premier also expected to come here around about 8:30 to inspect this particular site and to check perhaps if, there is a possibility that, this problem or the hospital operations could resume in the near future, and just to see the extent of what, this fire has caused in terms of the damage and in terms of the loss of those equipment that were burnt in this particular place.
Manqoba, two questions as my last question to you. I'm seeing a bunch of people on social media now asking the question, were there any COVID-19 vaccines in this facility? I don't know if that question has been asked. And two, you did ask this question earlier, and I suppose it is an obvious question to ask, is that of arson, or at least a suspicion of arson.
Well, Gareth, at this particular point, we haven't been able to establish whether there were any vaccines. In fact, when we spoke to Kwarakekana earlier on, what she did indicate is that it was only dry medical supplies that were destroyed in this place. So at this particular point, she has told us that it was dry equipment, not any of those wet substances or sanitizers, or any of the vaccines or any of the medication perhaps that was stored in this particular facility. And what we do understand is that when this fire broke out, we do understand that it was put out and there was attempts to try and remove some of the equipment from here. But we understand that it did reignite later on again. At this particular point, officials saying that they cannot actually confirm whether there was any foul play in the fire itself, given the fact that the investigations are still ongoing. In fact, even the fire officials have not been able to access this particular site at this moment, as the fire is still alight at this particular point. So I guess it will have to take an investigation, Gareth, and only time will tell as those investigations unravel whether or not there was an issue of foul play when it comes to this fire here.